was depressed as shit, and I just didn't have the energy at that moment to get on an airplane and go to New York.
Sure.
And go to the studio with this guy named Michel Palmeroff, who was, they called him the French Bob Dylan. He was a big star in France. And he was over here, and Ed put me with him to try to do some writing. And he heard this song, and he said, I want to produce this with you.
All right.
And I went to Ed Silvers, my boss. He had been promising to get me a record deal, but he really hadn't made much of an effort. And he said, if you make a single with that, it'd be like pissing in the wind. Hang on, we'll get you a record deal, and we'll get you an album deal. That's the way to go. Well, I never followed through with Michel. He was in LA, I was in Nashville. And I made a mistake. I should have taken advantage of that opportunity to go to New York. And I never did. And I think this song might have been a hit. So it's one of a couple of big regrets that I have in terms of decisions I didn't make that I could have. On a scale from 1 to 10, Tom was a 0, and his mother was there to remind him the time she forgot. By the time he was 16, he was less than the sum of his virtues, being mostly aware of a whole lot of things he was not. Tom was a little too short, shy around women. He was in love with a phone out he kept in the drawer. To his dad he was worthless, to his mom just some more dirty linen. He took his first breath the day that he walked out the door. It's hard to grow up when you live in a shadow. The bigger trees take all the sun. He couldn't grow up as a family disaster, so he learned to grow up on the run, up on the run. Joyce was born uninvited, a pain and a problem, and her father was there to remind her the time she forgot. By the time she was 16, her face and her breasts were heroes. In backseats with boys, she could forget the things she was not. Joyce got into trouble, so she went to Cleveland. Tom joined the army and fought overseas in the war. He won some medals, learned about love from a waitress. Joyce started working and she learned about love from her child. It's hard to grow up when you live in the shadow. The bigger trees take all the sun. She couldn't grow up as the family disaster, so she learned to grow up on the run, up on the run. On a hot August night in an army, hot August night in an army bar outside of Cleveland, Tom was on furlough and Joyce was on 9 until 2. They felt like old friends the minute that they started talking. His eyes said, I know you. Her smile said, I've waited for you. They talked of beginnings, of losing and winning. Lessons they learned on the run. They grew up crooked, together they shook it. In the sunlight they found, in the love that they went white. It's hard to grow up when you live in the shadow. The bigger trees take all the sun. this out.